Now, to give you a sense of how much Steve Bannon might be going to war with the Trump administration now that he's been relieved of command, now that he's no longer chief strategist for Donald Trump, we're going to give you a bunch of quotes about how his publication Breitbart, and he is now back to being in charge of Breitbart, is, well, in their words, let me quote Steve Bannon here, quote, "We're going to war. They're going to war with the White House." Going to do a little bit of this. Fun for everybody, except Donald Trump. For progressives, those guys ripping each other to shreds is a wonderful moment. Because remember, taking down the establishment is a worthy goal if you win and you have a good strategy that's going to deliver for the American people. In their case, they won and then started punching each other in the face. And so now Steve Bannon and his ilk are out of power. This is them trying to get back into power. So what are you going to do? You're going to defeat Trump and put someone even more right-wing in his place? Good luck with that strategy. Someone even more in a populist rage, someone who's a bigger white nationalist. It reminds me of the crying Nazi, the guy who was featured in the Vice documentary about Charlottesville, who said that the problem with Trump was that he wasn't racist enough. He let his daughter marry a Jew. Okay, good luck trying to find someone more racist, more bigoted, etc., to execute your strategy. It ain't gonna happen. All they're gonna do is rip each other up now. So, and by the way, you have to understand something. I'm not a guy who's been on that side. I know that the MSNBCs of the world just love it when Republicans fight, but that's in reality, 90% of the time, that's the right wing of the Republican Party pulling the rest of the Republicans further right. It's not really a problem for them. For them, that's the solution. In this case, they pulled him right, it wasn't right enough, and now they're going to war. And here, it's not going to be effective. They can't make Trump any more right-wing than he already is. They're not going to change the minds of establishment players like Gary Cohn and HR McMaster. This is a war that the Breitbart guys will lose, but they will do a lot of damage to Trump and the Republican Party losing it, which for the rest of us is great news. So let me tell you more about it. Bannon also says we have a duty to the country to be the vanguard of the movement. Well, again, fair enough if you were going to seize power, but you already did seize power and it didn't work. So now this is the movement turning on their leader and turning on the rest of the party. Have at it, Hoss. So Alex Marlow is a Breitbart news editor in chief, and he says about Bannon, quote, he wants to beat their ideas into submission. Well, right now, that's certainly not the direction that it's going, because it appears Steve Bannon has been beaten into submission, and hence he's now running a failing media outlet online again. And they make almost no money, almost all their revenue is gone, 90% of advertisers have pulled out, and their numbers are not doing well at all. Their readership has gone down. So that's him leading a movement, that's him beating ideas into submission. So far, it certainly doesn't look like it. Okay, now they explain here in Vanity Fair, Bannon's main targets are the West Wing's group of New York Democrat, quote unquote, globalists, Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, and former Goldman Sachs president Gary Cohn, as well as the hawks comprised of National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster and his deputy Dina Powell. So if they were talking about how they were against interventionism, which was one of their claims during the campaign, and Trump has said over and over again that he wants to get out of Afghanistan and there's no winning there, except tonight he's set to announce further troop escalation in Afghanistan. Well, they didn't win that war, and by the way, they don't actually mean de-escalate. Bannon's bright idea was to hand over Afghanistan to a bunch of privately funded mercenaries who would then get to do whatever they want to maximize profit with guns in a different country under the auspices of the federal government when they are not the federal government. That's the only thing that's a worse idea than further escalation in Afghanistan. So they don't really mean that they are against the hawks. They just want to make more money off of wars, and you should know their real agenda. In terms of fighting against Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, well, good luck. That's the president's daughter and son-in-law, and so, but they're going to fight dirty anyway. We'll tell you about that in a second. Now, Vanity Fair further explains that on Sunday, Breitbart took renewed aim at McMaster, who's of course the national security advisor, with a headline claiming he advocated Quran kissing. Okay, so that's insane. So I looked further into that. Pretty sure General McMaster is not all about making out with the Quran. So let's go to graph 46 first. The title of this insane piece on Breitbart was H.R. McMaster endorsed book that advocates Quran kissing apology ceremonies. Did a US general really advocate that our troops going around apologizing to Muslims and kissing the Quran over and over? Of course not. You want to talk about fake news? Breitbart is the king of fake news. That's a grossly misleading title in a preposterous article. So what's the reality? The Hill reports the book that McMaster in his tenure as general did promote was a guide, and it's a military manual by the way, to how, quote, not to inflame religious tensions with Muslim populations in the countries where American troops are deployed. Now, if you're a general, that seems pretty sensible. We're going into Iraq. Our claim is that we're going to liberate Iraq. So if you go in there saying you're against Muslims, Iraq is almost all Muslim. That's a really bad idea and will get more troops killed. Remember, at a minimum, pretend that you're there to liberate them. It's not a matter of apologizing, it's a matter of not getting our troops killed. Nobody's telling them to go kiss Qurans. What they're telling them to do is don't antagonize the local population we are pretending to help. Otherwise, you'll be in a bigger civil war and a bigger mess than we were already in. Seems pretty sensible, and as usual, Breitbart completely misleading you. Gee, I wonder why they don't have very many readers. Okay, now, who else is Bannon gonna go after? A Bannon ally said, oh yeah, Jared Kushner, quote, he said Jared is a dope. Wow. Apparently he calls Jared and Ivanka Javanka. Whatever. Now, there's another piece of the profit motive here that might not make Bannon's motivations purely beneficial to just the movement, but perhaps also beneficial to his bottom line. The Bannon camp believes that Rupert Murdoch, was especially receptive to Kushner's lobbying because Murdoch is worried about the rise of Sinclair Broadcasting as a competitor of Fox, and blames Bannon for Trump's decision so far not to block Sinclair's $3.9 billion takeover of Tribune Media in May. So Murdoch owns Fox News. He doesn't want competition to it. He wanted to block the Sinclair merger because Sinclair is also insanely right-wing and might be a competitor to Fox News for that extreme right-wing part of the population. So Murdoch's mad that merger doesn't get blocked, although he loves it when his mergers are approved. Gee, it's almost as if they care about their bottom line and not real ideology. All these guys. So Murdoch uses Kushner, and now Bannon doesn't like that because he might want to do a deal with Sinclair that involves a new organization and more money for Steve Bannon. So they say Breitbart staffer says all the Sinclair guys are super tight with Breitbart. Imagine if we got together Hannity and O'Reilly and started something. Okay, so they are in fact thinking about starting a new venture, and hence they were pissed because their own financial motivations were touched. Now, what's he gonna do with his feud with Kushner and the rest? Ooh, this is where it gets really good. In his feud with Kushner, Bannon may have a powerful ally. Reince Priebus also recently departed from the White House with a quiver of grudges. Recently, according to several sources, Bannon has told friends he wants Priebus to give his account of the James Comey firing to Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller. Wow, you get that? That is Bannon telling Priebus, who's also pissed, hey, why don't you tell him that Kushner helped fire James Comey? Why? Because that means that Kushner could be investigated by Mueller, a criminal investigation. And does that investigation lead up to the president? Very, very likely so. And here's Steve Bannon and the extreme right wing going, don't care. And if that leads to Trump's impeachment, so what? In fact, they're gonna get more specific about that in a second. But let me give you more from the Vanity Fair piece. At Breitbart, Bannon has a brigade of similarly happy warriors, they explain. Here's a quote, we're in a loud bar celebrating the return of our captain. Breitbart's Washington editor Matt Boyle told me on Friday night. Breitbart's defense of Trump has so far helped keep the Russia scandal from gaining traction on the right, but that could swiftly change if Trump, under the influence of Kushner and Cohn, deviates too far from the positions he ran on. But he will, because Trump doesn't even know the positions he ran on. Doesn't know, doesn't care, has never cared. He was just crowd surfing. He was A/B testing in the crowd. He was like, we're against trade wars. Boo, crickets. We're for trade wars. Yes, that's it. I meant we're for trade wars. But now that Bannon is gone and everybody else is gone and all you have is the establishment left, the guy's an idiot. He doesn't have two brain cells to rub together. He just listens to whoever's in the room last. And who's in the room last now? Kushner, Cohn, and the other guys. McMaster and the others. So he will deviate from what Steve Bannon wants. And then Bannon and Breitbart are now promising that means we'll help unearth the Russian connections, help the Russian investigation of Robert Mueller, the one that they had been diminishing all along and saying that it was a nothing burger, that it was no big deal. Now, get a load of this quote. If that happens, said one high-level Breitbart staffer, meaning the deviation from what Breitbart wants and Steve Bannon wants, quote, we're prepared to help Paul Ryan rally votes for impeachment. We've got Bright Club and we've got war. That's what this is. So his own base already, a couple of days after Steve Bannon's let go, is not only talking about war, which they did on day one, now they're talking about impeachment. Now remember, if Democrats ever brought up impeachment, the right wing would go, oh my God, how dare you? How dare you? But the minute they're touched even slightly, they're like, well, I mean, we could help Paul Ryan, their mortal enemy. They hate Paul Ryan. We could help Paul Ryan get votes for impeachment. Make our day. Have at it, Hoss. Everybody take out your political shivs and go to work on one another. Now this is a right-wing fight that actually doesn't pull the Republican Party and Washington and the country to the further right wing. This actually does a lot of damage. It'll do more damage to Trump, the Republican Party, and everything else by the time this war is done. So it's a rare war I support. Go forward, fire away. If you like this clip of the Young Turks, you know there's a whole live 2-hour show, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern every day, and you can download it or stream it and watch it without ads if you become a member. tytnetwork.com/join.